For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:06 on today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with F.L. Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
Our third to last show of the season, and tonight we'll be chatting with Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon. He's a handbag maker.
But more than that, it's all about branding. It's all about, and this, as if you heard the ad, it's a lot of transitions because he's next generation. You know, they went from a product, he went into branding and white label. So there's a great story to tell behind it.
But first, as usual, some entrepreneurial news of the week and a pretty nice investment from Harry Rosen, $15 million they're putting into their Montreal location.
They are. This is, and we're going to come back on. I know this topic comes up over and over again, Dan, but it's that bricks, versus bricks and mortar versus online. They feel, the article was interesting because they talked about the luxury market and the luxury market in Montreal. But they say there's not a huge luxury market in Montreal. And for Harry Rosen's take on it is that that's good for them because you don't have the Gucci's of the world that have their own store here. They go in and they operate through other locations, whether it's a Holt Renfrew, whether it's a Harry Rosen. And that's where the Harry Rosens of the world say, hey, you know what? It's great. We don't have to compete with all these high luxury retailers. They want to sell through us. So it even improves their branding and their store location. But naturally, it always comes back to the mix of online versus the in-store location, the bricks and mortar. And as Harry Rosen was saying in the article, basically they assume or they account that 70% of the people that walk through their store and buy something have already researched online elsewhere. But they're coming in because they're coming in for service. They're coming in to feel and touch the product because it's Harry Rosen, it's fashion. It's there's no question on the quality of it. So they are purposing their stores so that there's a reason for people to come in. But there's also enough information online that they can check out and compare against the competitor before they walk through the door.
Are high-end retailers like Harry Rosen a bit more isolated from the issues that sort of plague retailers because, a lot of these high-end shops are such interesting destination points?
I think they still have to manage overhead. Now, Harry Rosen is across the country. They have 17 stores and 1,000 employees and a few $100 million of sales. So one location in and of itself is not necessarily going to make or break anything. But they still have to make the bottom line. They still have to ensure that their locations and their operations are efficient. There's still a lot of competition out there, and this concept of disposable luxury, these disposable clothing, disposable watches, disposable anything that people just say, you know what, it's a trend, it's a fashion, I'll spend a little less, I'll wear that shirt twice, it'll cost me $50 instead of paying $500, but I'll get to buy 10 of them over the next couple of years or the next year. And I think that's really where they have to fight against. So there's always a market for luxury. I mean, that's who we are. We talk about many products that somebody clings to an idea and they can sell it. Overpriced, there's always somebody that wants it. But the competition is tough.
And we talk about sort of retailers taking things to the next level as well and offering different kinds of services. I think, too, if we're in the same shopping category, something like Club Monaco, which recently opened their new flagship store downtown that has kind of like a coffee shop down there, so you can have coffee while you browse the clothes.
We've said it time and time again. People need a reason to walk into the store, and usually other than just for the product. So is it because the company has a great level of social responsibility? Is it because they have coffee and product that they can serve while their guests are shopping? Is it because they have this celebrity that's on site that people want to see? People want to have a reason. People need a reason to walk into the store more than just the average, I see a pair of socks, I want to go buy them.
On to bread now. Bread matters, and I love a good bread story. So this bakery, Boulard.
Well, now that Passover's over, it's good to have a bread story.
For sure. Boulard. Tell me about Boulard, and they're really sort of taking their model to an industrial level.
This story, that I read really epitomizes what the entrepreneur is. The gentleman that runs Boulard, he started off at Pain Doré. I mean, he started off other places, but his previous life was at Au Pain Doré, and he had much bigger ideas, but ideas that were too big for Au Pain Doré. So he wanted to create this high quality bread product, non-GMO. That's where we are today. But when you're doing something really high quality in the food industry, it takes a lot of money. It's very capital intensive if you want to do it something that's scalable. If you want to pump out 50,000 ciabatta breads, you need that equipment to pump it out. You're not having a whole bunch of bakers there with a bunch of ovens making everything by hand. So it needed that capital intensive. It needed that risk level. And this gentleman that opened up Boulard, the story stood out to me because it epitomized the entrepreneur. It epitomized taking the risk. It epitomized taking somebody's passion. And it was a great Montreal story because, we all love our bread here. There's no question about it, even though I'm trying to stay away from it. But it's not just the retailer. He's selling all over North America. So, you bake it, you flash freeze it, you send it. It's still a fresh product when you unflash freeze it, or whatever the term is. But that is his passion, and that is what he wanted to create. He went away from his employer to go start his own with a risk. Of course, he had to knock on a whole bunch of doors to get his financing and money, and that wasn't easy. But when he got it, it was quite a story.
This other local success story, a guy named Max Clément out of Saint Jerome. He makes it's a brand of watch called Conifère, and he makes wood watches. Now, he's been making them for a while, but decided that he needed a bit of a boost and turned to the internet for help.
Kickstarter, the Kickstarter programs, the all these type online crowdfunding sources, they're usually for startups. I got a great idea, I got a great product, I'm going to invent the next best iWatch or the next best product, whatever it might be. So come out, and while we're developing, get onto the program, get into the store. You'll be the first in the world to get it. The reason I like this story is because he said, that's a great idea, but why only for startups? Why not? I'm a watchmaker. I want to take something new. I want to use a different type of wood or a different type of mechanism. But I would love people to get involved. I would love, I need some financing behind it so that I can pump out this product. So I'm 3-4 years into the company. I want to have a new line. Let's go to Kickstarter. Let's go to the crowdfunding. I think it was just a brilliant thought and a different twist on using this great online source of funds in a very different way than most other people use it.
And finally, we're seeing more and more venture capital coming into Canada, which is a very good sign. Is there a entrepreneurial resurgence?
I think that, I don't know if it's an entrepreneurial resurgence. I don't know if it's the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar. I don't know if it's a question of maybe we're getting a little better at the dog and pony shows when people are pitching. But $881 million raised in the first quarter of 2016. That eclipses all other quarters, because if you just look at 2015, 2014, the max was maybe $500-600 million in a given quarter. And it's a lot of different companies. It's not one company that's getting it. In the first quarter, there were 103 different funding rounds that got it. So I think in Canada, it's really more the smaller venture capital person. I think there's still the niche in the States that if somebody needs $20 or $30 or $40 million plus, you're going to find it in the States, not really going to find it in Canada. So I think it's the smaller ones, but they're becoming so much more active that people are out there. They're looking for businesses to buy. We always say, we're sitting around the partner table in my office. There's always far more people looking to buy a business than there are looking to sell.
Coming up, we'll chat with Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon, and later in the program, we'll talk about branding on today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:20 on today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Fuller Landau's Josh Miller with you, and we welcome our guest this evening, Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon, and they are a handbag maker. Chris, welcome to CJD.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's nice to be here.
No problem. So first question's the easiest. Tell us about Christopher Kon, about yourself, and about the brand.
Christopher Kon. Well, about the brand, we make contemporary leather handbags, very simple, timeless bags with a twist. And, we've been doing this for 16 years now. We launched the brand 16 years ago, and we felt there was an important need for branding. We felt that there was certainly a shift from white label products, private label products. And, we've been going at it for 16 years now, and it's certainly been exciting, and very, very fun for me.
Only handbags?
Not only handbags. I mean, the category is probably our biggest category, but we also do wallets, travel bags, duffel bags, for gym stuff, for, workout for girls and stuff like that. Yeah, the product line is actually quite vast.
Now, let's go back before Christopher Kon.
Yes.
This is a company that was started by your father?
That's correct.
How long ago was that?
1978. So my math ain't so good, but
maybe
you can help me with that.
Years.
But it's been a long time. My father started doing private label, and that was really his strength. He had built probably the biggest manufacturing facility in all of North America, making the best possible products, higher end products, but it was for other customers. So we never really had our own label or our own brand to develop.
Now, when did you get into the business? Or when did you start? You probably ate and lived and breathed it growing up.
5 years old. I'd wake up at 5 and go with Dad to the factory on the weekends. And, for me, it's so nostalgic. Like, I'll go into any room, and the minute I smell leather, it takes me back to a very, very early time in my life. It's one of my favorite smells in the world. And I think in part because it was something that I had with my dad. And, but then I started working weekends more seriously at around the age of 12 or 13. Summers and weekends. No fun with the friends, fun in the factory. And I went in full-time when I was 18 years old.
Now, when you went in full-time, was it really ground floor? Did you start in sales? Were you shipping? Like, where did you what was the evolution of you kind of climbing your way to gain more responsibility?
Well, sometimes you hear about people who go in and they sort of get groomed into taking a certain role in the company. For me, there was no grooming. For me, it was literally ground up. I was cleaning the bathrooms. I was mopping the floors. I spent a couple of years in shipping. Production, I was there. I mean, I spent most of my time in production, but I really made my way around. I worked in the stock room for quite a long time.
Was it tough to gain the respect of your coworkers just because of your last name?
Not really, because I've always been a very open and loving and friendly person with everybody. And, the majority of the people that worked for us, really, that was their career. So they knew me from the day I was born. I was always little Chris to them. And so there was really never an issue about respect, because I think the most important thing was I respected everybody there. And so I think just by that alone, I gained respect from people also.
Love your employee. Hug your employee. I like that. Let's do that.
We hug all the time. We still hug all the time. It's a very different working environment where we're at.
Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon, join us this evening on today's Entrepreneur. We'll talk about branding in a little bit.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
We're joined by Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon. He is a handbag maker. And Chris, this is the branding thing is kind of interesting here, because you came up with this with your brand, Christopher Kon, within sort of the larger family of your father's business, which was a bit different. Can you tell us about the origins of your father's business and how you grew your own brand within it?
Well, when my father started, he was really a master technician, and I think that was his greatest gift. Aside of his very charming personality, he was just very talented in that area. He really understood construction very well. Like, he was almost an engineer at it. So he was product building. So he was in the private label business, product building for major retailers, the best retailers in the United States of America, in Canada, in Europe. But then we sort of hit this this period of time where private label didn't mean so much to people anymore. People wanted a branded product. And I remember my father always said, he knew when I was a little kid, he was, well, if my son ever wants to come in the business, I got the perfect name, Christopher Kon. And that would be the name we would use. And
did he decide that before you were born and then named you accordingly?
No, he he decided that a little bit later on. But it was interesting that he had the intuition. And I think there was a moment, a really pivotal moment, where I just got up one day. I was in my chair, I was working and grinding it out. And I said, no, this is really what I want to do. And I certainly had an artistic talent from very young, and I knew how to draw, and I had ideas that I wanted to share. And, you know, he really took a chance on me. He's running a business, and here's this kid who's 21 and says, Dad, I want to do this. And he basically said, then go and do it and show me. And that was really the birth. 16 years ago was when we started to come up with the branded product.
But was it because you thought the private label, the white labeling, was going to start turning downward?
It's not because we thought. It had already happened. We had already started noticing that, you know, it wasn't as important. So a lot of the bigger chains, you know, the orders were coming in less frequently, and the feedback was always, it's not as meaningful to a consumer anymore. They want branded products. So that was the moment where we knew. We already were licensing another branded product at the time. And I felt like, you know what, I had a lot of things to say, and I had a lot of things I wanted to do. And that was the perfect moment. And it was great that it happened at that time, because a year or two later, it was my brand that had slowly started taking off and was kind of helping the company to
What's the very first thing? You want to build a brand. Mm-hmm. What is that first step you have to take before anything else?
Well, you have to jump off a cliff, really, because it's a leap of faith, and you have to have a point of view. And I think for me, the most interesting part was I was still so naive that I came in with a very fresh perspective. I wasn't in that part of the business for very long. So I came in with an idea of what I thought I wanted to see out there. And it happened to be different from what everyone else was doing. And that was sort of what really launched us at the beginning. We had an incredible first season because of that.
Building a brand, there's a lot more behind it. It's not just about the front face. It's about the right buying, the right design, getting your product to the store and to the shelf. And we'll talk a lot more about that when we come back.
More with Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon in just a moment on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:36 on Today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Fuller Landau's Josh Miller, and our guest this evening is Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon. He is a designer of handbags and other accessories. And Chris, you're a very creative person, obviously, in a creative medium. Do some of your visions ever just never get to production, or do you ever have sort of issues making your vision into something that is eventually made into a handbag?
All the time. It's never a clear road. You could start with something and it ends up to be something completely different. And there's certainly been things that I was very, very proud of, worked really hard on, and they were like complete disasters. But you know, you learn a lot with those things, and I think over time you have a good sense of what you know is going to work, what's worked in the past. Not keep repeating what you've done and what you've won with in the past, but at least take some of those key points and move them forward.
And for others that are sort of in a creative medium, what advice would you have for them in terms of sort of getting right back on the horse and trying out something new? Because it could be discouraging if you know your vision doesn't play out.
Well, I think with every creative person, the ego is a very big part of the process. And I think one thing with me, maybe early on, I felt very destroyed, because it was a part of me that I was exposing, and if people didn't like it, I felt like it was me that they didn't like. But I learned very quickly that now it's just constructive criticism. If it doesn't work, it's really detrimental to me to get hung up on those types of things. You know, it can handicap you moving forward. So I take it with a grain of salt. I learn from it, and then I move on. And being a creative person, you have to kind of understand that it's also a business. You can't just you have to be able to make it and sell it. It has to be a viable product. So you have to also have that part of it in the component. You know, is it a sellable product? Is it a marketable product? It could be beautiful, but art is beautiful and it hangs on a wall. You have to sell the product. So that's the balance that's been most challenging over the years.
And not everybody's comfortable exposing themselves, so you know you got to get used to that and then move on from there. Now you were doing white label. You talked about manufacturing,
Yes,
and we were talking off air a little bit. And you're now importing.
that is correct.
Are you importing 100% now?
I'm importing 100%.
You used to manufacture 100%.
That is correct.
When did that shift change, and how gradual was it?
Well, the shift changed about 9 years ago, and the shift was not gradual at all. We went all or nothing. So we shipped one season completely domestic production, and the following season we shipped the whole full collection completely imported. So it was a huge learning curve for us. It was very, very scary, but it was very necessary. It had to be done, and we took the necessary steps beforehand, knowing that this was the transition we were going to do. We couldn't go half-half. We
Was
had
it
to
a
go
dollar?
all or
Was it
nothing.
a dollars and cents thing? It was too expensive to manufacture. It was too cost effective to import.
That is absolutely correct.
Because your customers, you had to hit certain price points, otherwise you couldn't necessarily get that product out.
Yeah, and the cost of production was just getting more and more expensive, and also the infrastructure wasn't there anymore. If a machine would break down, we'd have to wait 2.5, 3 weeks for a technician, and he'd start billing us when he left his office. And, you know, to change like a belt on a sewing machine could end up costing you $600. So we didn't have the infrastructure around us anymore. The whole industry, the bottom fell out. There was no one really left. And then also, you know, the cost of production going up, price points of products coming down. We just couldn't be competitive anymore.
Now, you're importing from which country?
China,
Strictly. Learning curve with China, quality assurance. Maybe you can elaborate a little on that. How much you're on the ground there, you know, how much do you send them your specs, the strike costs, you know, what's worked, what hasn't worked for you?
Well, the learning curve was huge because I had never worked this way before. I mean, we worked very organically before, and it had to be a lot more structured. We travel there anywhere between 4 and 5 times a year. So we are very present. And I think it's important because I think, you know, our suppliers know that we're very, very loyal. We're very present. We're always on top of things. And it's just the nature of the business changes. You really have to be monitoring things. You know, you're at a distance. I mean, they're an ocean away. So sometimes it's later nights. The emails are going back and forth at like midnight, but you got to do what you got to do.
Is it tough to communicate a design?
It's very hard. The
Like
design,
you have to use software. What are you using to really, so that their machinery, their factories can pump out the exact same product that you designed that came out of your head?
you know, with design, what's interesting about design is there's always that element of the hand, and that's something that at times can get lost. We do use software. I mean, we do send spec sheets with CAD designs. I'm still very old school. Like, I still hand sketch my things, but you know, I understand construction enough that I can explain things. You know, things don't always come out the way that you want them to, and I think that's the biggest issue, is that the turnaround time on sampling takes so long. You know, you send out a spec, the bag comes in 2 weeks later. It's not really the way you wanted it. You have to make changes. You have to wait another couple of weeks. So, you know, when we had our factory, I could turn it around in a day. Oh, I don't like this handle. I could just make up a new one and take off the old one, put a new one on it, and see how that works. So it's certainly was an adjustment, you know.
And there's no question technology plays a role as well, as you can kind of visualize something a little better when you can create it through whatever software or design system. Now, with the advent of technology, you know, because when people are thinking designs and where do you get your ideas from, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I'll travel to Europe or I'll travel overseas and I'll get my vision and my design. Is that what you do for inspiration? Where do you find your inspiration for your ideas of your next product and design?
I work in a different way. You know, if I'm traveling to Europe or doing things like that, I think for me, it's not really going to find designs. For me, it's more, my environment inspires me. It's not any specific thing. If I'm in New York, I have a different energy inside of me, and it's all about the energy that you have. It's all about, you have passion, you change your environment, and all of a sudden you just have a different feeling in you, which will spark something. That in itself, I think, is very valuable. For everything else in terms of inspiration, you don't really have to travel as much anymore if you're talking strictly product, because today everything is available at your fingertips. You can be anywhere in the world just on the internet, and
you can follow trends online.
Absolutely. You follow trends on Instagram. That's the biggest trendsetter today.
Now, so you're also creating trends. I mean, you have a brand, you're creating product. What are you using? How are you using social media to get the name out there and your brand and your product?
Well, we're like everybody else, we're certainly on Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and we try and create content that's relevant. We try and create content that gives you a sense of a lifestyle, and we try and be consistent with that, with the brand, and who we really want to target. This is really where stuff has shifted today. People today, the millennials are not really reading print that much anymore. They're on Instagram. This is the most credible form of advertising, because the person who's showing you their lifestyle, so people want to buy into that. Oh, here's a 17-year-old girl. She's traveling to Miami for the weekend. She's got her cute little purse with all of her like little cosmetics, and it could just be a lifestyle shot of her like overlooking like this beautiful ocean view. This is what people want to aspire to. So they attach themselves to that, and then the products that are around it help them kind of get closer to that world that they want to be living in.
And of course, what a great segue, Dan, as we're going to talk about branding and social media coming up after the break.
Yep, online branding. We'll talk about Instagram and more with Philippe Cusson, who's a branding director and business development director, but also deals with marketing issues over at Fuller Landau. So Philippe is on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, chartered professional accountants and business advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Coming up to 10 to 8 on today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. We have Christopher Kontogianis in studio from Christopher Kon. We'll have his one piece of advice for today's Entrepreneur on the way. But first, Philippe Cusson has dropped by. He's the the business development director at Fuller Landau, here to talk about some branding issues, some marketing issues. And Philippe, here we have a great example of a person who is a brand, and how you can really, with just maybe chopping off a few letters, in Chris's case, you come up with a really catchy, memorable brand like Christopher Kon.
It's a great story, actually. Well, I think some of the keywords are brand recognition and brand awareness, right? You want to build your own brand and build your you want to build your brand, and you want to build your image and tailor it to your product and tailor it to your end market, I guess.
So there's brand recognition, there's brand awareness. I mean, we're talking social media. There's so many things to be aware of when you're launching, when you're building, when you're reinventing yourself. Kind of, what are the few things that come to mind, Philippe?
Well, to your point, some studies say that 63% of luxury marketers say that print and, actually social media will surpass print, TV, and loyalty programs. I think that's a key point here, but I think social media is your second homepage. I think it's an extension of your brand, and I think you need to use it accordingly. And some of the, I guess, best practices would be to stay human, be genuine in your approach with social media, and use the different platforms and leverage those technologies and those influencers as well to make sure your brand actually resonates with your audience.
I think
sometimes people are really concerned that they have to always reply to the comments, reply to the online world, and have somebody dedicated so that they can always quickly answer a question, mm-hmm. and I don't know how.
Well, I think communication is important, because I think the people who are reaching out to you, if they get a response back from you, I think it really resonates with them, and I think it's something that goes a lot further than we realize, because they feel really a connection. There's someone at the other end of the line, and a very important point is, being someone who's a brand, having my name on a product, I never felt like I was bigger than the product. I wanted to stay behind a little bit, and I wanted the success to be the product, and I wanted the success to be the team. It was a team environment. It wasn't me alone. I had a lot of people involved in making certain things happen. So like you said, like the authenticity has to be there, because today people can smell it. If it's a fake, they will smell through it in a second and they'll know. And it could be a problem, a big problem.
No, and listen, your head fit through the door when you walked into the studio, so it's a good sign.
I have a very, very small
that your
head.
feet
My
are still
wife
on the
is
ground.
listening. She knows I have the world's tiniest head, so I have no problem with that.
And there's no question when you're talking online, social media, and branding, you also got to measure. I mean, there's got to be some analytics. There's got to be some information that you got to grasp for. And it's not just about the genuine message, but it's monitoring it and seeing what the response is. And when we come back after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about measuring what you put online.
Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon and Philippe Cusson talking about branding from Fuller Landau here on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:56 on Today's Entrepreneur. We're joined by Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon. His one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur in just moments. But first, Josh, chatting with Philippe Cusson, Business Development Director at Fuller Landau, about branding-related issues.
And just before the break, lots of people throw out this word. It's called analytics, and it's really measuring your online activity and then some. So, Philippe, I know we were talking about branding. You're talking about social media. You're trying to get it out there. What about measuring it? What about the analytics side of it?
I think the most important element here is to actually you want to deliver the right message and the right content to the right people at the right time, and you want to use data to actually do that. There's some pretty good platforms out there, new technologies that will actually do exactly that. They'll make sure that whatever you want to communicate to your end audience, you'll deliver in it. You can actually automate the message, but you don't want to do that. You want to communicate genuine information, lifestyle, yet you can actually automate and use analytics to do so.
Now, what about using influencers, using bloggers, using people that, can reach so many other people? How would that fall into a strategy?
I don't know if you're using that, but you should definitely consider doing that. But just to give you an example, some bloggers in the States actually, a girl called Wendy Nguyen actually launched a YouTube video on how to tie a scarf, and she got 29 million views. Just imagine if your brand is tied to that YouTube video. So it's actually great. It's a great way to actually sell your lifestyle approach and also your brand and the product itself. So.
We certainly have been doing that over the years. We've tied ourselves up with some very, very influential bloggers. And, when you talk about quantifying things, we've had bloggers post images of them wearing one of our items, and like that item is sold out in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So we know it's there. The thing that gets interesting with Instagram, for instance, is, once those people start having like enough followers, then there's a dollar amount attached to it. So then you have to be much more picky depending on the size of your business. Where do you really want to put your dollars? So we always try and keep it to where we want to find the up-and-comers. We want to find the girls that have like great influence, that still feel grassroots and on the ground level. And we'll either do collaborations with them, we'll stock them with product. You're going to Coachella next week. Let's get a bag on you, get a couple of shots. So we're trying to really, really key in with the kind of girls that we want to see wearing our product. And that's how we're doing it.
It's making the most of your distribution channels almost, your online distribution channels, and finding the right person with the right message to really support that product. And I know we can talk about branding and online for forever and a day, but as we approach the last moment of our show, as we do each week, we'll turn to Chris, Christopher Kon, and ask you, Chris, what would be your one piece of advice to today's entrepreneur?
Be passionate. Don't take no for an answer, and just work really hard, because that's what it is. There's no shortcuts. You have to work very, very hard, and you have to believe in what you're doing is the right thing, and be true to who you are as a person, because otherwise you won't last very long.
Thanks very much, Chris. Dan, my little takeaway, and it was very faint earlier on, but you kind of heard the importance of the team around him, the importance of being collaborative and inclusive, and it's never just a one-person show. And I think Chris understands that very well.
Even when your name is the brand.
Even when your name is the brand.
Christopher Kontogianis of Christopher Kon, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks to Philippe Cusson of Fuller Landau as well. And we're back next week, next Monday night here at 7 for today's Entrepreneur. The Exchange, filling in for me is Dan Spector tonight. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.